start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like we got everybody here tonight, so we've got a quorum, we got that squared away. Okay, on the regular agenda, I'm going to make a change on here. We're going to move 19 up after 10. Does that work for you, Mark? Yep, there you are. Move you up there. Otherwise, anybody got anything else? Brenton, we're good?
So do you want to do that before 10?
We can go either way, whichever.
10 and 11 kind of feed into each other.
Okay, let's do that then.
So you want to do it 19 before
Yep,
10?
we'll do it before 10 then. Yeah, I guess I did see that right away. Yep, okay, we'll do that.
Motion to approve the agenda with change.
Second.
Chelsea made a motion, David did a second. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Consent agenda. Anybody have any questions on that, or? It's all pretty straightforward, so.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Dave makes a motion, John does a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Council minutes, did you guys get a chance to review? Looked good to me. Didn't see anything on there that we missed, or just a
Didn't
lot of
see any
them.
changes, so motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, Brian and Chelsea. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. All right, we're to the point of public comment. Anybody got anything they want to talk about tonight? If you do, state your name and I'll use the podium. If anybody's got anything they want to chit chat about. Going once, going twice. All right, close that. Who's got, Tom, you got it tonight, the sheriff's report? Oh, you got it on there. Got a quick update?
We leave it on every meeting.
Yeah, I know.
in case
It's
there's
fine.
an item, but
All right.
I don't have anything in front of me, so I don't know that I really have an accurate update I can give you anyway.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. You're pretty much a stand-in on here, so I'll just ask. But okay, then we're good. All right, number 8. Who's going to take that one? Lucas?
Yeah, Mr. Peterson, last week we had a meeting for some assessments, and they told us to come to this meeting as far as the public comment goes. It was suggested that we come to you and request at these kind of meetings that we get heads up notice on projects before they start.
Okay.
So I don't know where you want to add that in the agenda.
Yeah.
It's public comment, I guess you go back.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do the public comment, then go ahead and use the microphone up there.
The microphone and podium.
Yep.
Yeah.
And introduce yourself, and then we'll mark it down.
Good afternoon. My name is Patricia Mohammed, and I am a resident of 310 Mossway. And I'm here because we had a meeting last week where there was some issues that people brought up, a lot of complaints, and they told us to come to this meeting and present them here, not at that meeting. So that's why I'm here. A lot came out of that meeting, I think, and one of the main things that they told us to bring here is that whenever there's projects, that meeting was to just basically see if you had any grievances after being assessed for the projects, and most people were not aware that we were going to be billed for that project. So what people want is a heads up notice before the projects are approved, and before we're kind of stuck with the assessments. At that point, it was too late. I think he was the attorney presiding over the meeting. So I'm here to see how do we bring that to the council, since we know that there's more projects coming. I know Wall Street is going to be a big project. There's the roundabout which was a project that was being looked at last week. And I think further down the line, Cheyenne is also going to be expanded, right? As with the city development, it's not that we're against progress or anything. It's just that some of the projects are going to be a lot of money, and we're getting a lot of assessments, and at some point it gets to be too much. You know, since we've moved to Horace, we built a new house. In 5 years, our house payment has gone up $500, and it's like, you know, where is the end of that, and how are those considerations being given to the public that's paying for the assessments, and what's the process for that? Maybe so the public can be aware of what your process is when making these considerations on projects and assessments.
Okay, that's fair enough. Lucas or Jim, do you guys want to just kind of go through how we do that process, you know, for special assessments? I know we had gone over this a couple times in the past. We've had the same question, so.
So yeah, and it's a policy decision on behalf of the city council where it's, the main request is just to get letters.
Right.
For basically to be able to protest the project. You know, we do our resolution of necessity, and that gets published in the paper for like street projects. Basically what residents would like is a letter at that time saying that they have an opportunity to protest a project. So it's a decision that, you know, the city is providing its notice as required by the Century Code. So if the city wants to send additional letters, that's a council decision that would have to come from you guys, and it gets somewhat tricky because there are certain projects that residents cannot protest out of. So sewer and water projects, there is no opportunity to protest those projects because they are an extension of the city's water and sewer services. So it's something that for those other ones where there is actually the resolution of necessity getting published in the newspaper, does the city council want to send out letters at that time as well?
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, is getting even more. How many of you guys in here get the newspaper or read it online? Yeah. That's the problem we're getting into now, because we are sending that out and we're getting it published in the paper like we're supposed to. The problem is nobody reads it.
Correct. And that was something that came up at that meeting, was the public is looking to be made aware by a different method, because, I mean, who really reads the forum anymore? Everybody's online, and
But we still have to publish it in there because we got to adhere to state
right.
codes and all this stuff. What we've been looking at doing is being able to put this on our website as well, you know, to let people know what's with different projects and things like that. And we're looking into that. I don't know if there were some legalese that we were looking at one time, making sure that we weren't going to break any state rules on this. I think as long as we put it in the forum, we're probably okay. It's just this hasn't been talked about on a statewide level as to what. No,
on the City of Horace website or the forum website?
No, City of Horace's website. So we could basically mimic what, you know, you don't have to buy the paper. That's what we're trying to get to here. Of course, that's a revenue stream for the forum, but, you know, that's part of the deal. We are looking into doing that. If we send out letters for every time that we do this, it's going to get very costly, which I understand, but it's just still, you know, you guys don't want to pay any more to the city, and we don't want to charge you anymore for that, but it does add up. The bills will, for mailing letters, if we do this for every project, for every step of the project, it'll get costly. So what we're trying to figure out is if there's a way that we can do this via, like I said, the website.
What about emails? If you want to be notified, we give you an email
Well, I mean,
address,
if there was
and that's kind
some
of free.
repository, you know, like a listserv type of deal where we can
There are
do that.
updates that we have. If you go to our website, you can sign up for updates about things right now. We try to communicate
About projects and the meetings that will be discussed at before they're actually happening. Okay.
With a lot that happened last week,
Yeah.
I think it's rest assured that there is a lot of conversation that's already happening behind the scenes. We're trying to evaluate how we're going to communicate, what needs to be communicated, and when. You take a development, any type of street development, whatever, there's a long process to it and a lengthy process to it, and there is communication that goes out. The big question, like you're saying, is how do you get it? How do you find it? And yes, we are looking what's legal, what's what we have to do by state code. What's done by state code isn't necessarily, you know, in the forum, isn't necessarily a happy place for everybody to go find information. So I think absolutely we will come up with a better system, and how we present that in the future.
Okay.
I think one of the other things too, being we're going, North Dakota legislator is going to be going into session here in January. I'd like to actually see them allow us to put all those documents up on our webpage without any, and I don't really know if there's any issue with it, but I want to make sure there isn't any issues with it, so that whatever goes in the forum we can put up on our webpage too, so everybody sees, you know, when these projects are when they're coming around, when is the public protest time, you know, when people come in here and do that, and then that kind of thing. So you guys are all aware when it's going to happen.
Right.
The challenge is the website doesn't push information.
Right.
And you
You'd
have
have
to
to
be
go
diligent
read it.
about going out to look for it. So one way is for you to sign up on the website, because there is a notify me. There for certain types of projects, it will push some notifications out to residents. But in a project like this, we don't have that process today to push out that notification, because guess what? It only reaches a small subset of people that have actually registered. So that would be one step, is to, you know, if people are concerned about this, they need to sign up for those notifications. We can push that content, but we can only do so much, right? We can push
Right.
it out to the website, we can make it available, but unless you're going out there and looking for it, you're probably not going to see it. And in the case of the school project, this one was approved long, long ago, right? I mean, this was most of this was approved before the construction even started, right, of the new schools. So that's where, you know, the notification, all those steps were completed before the assessment. So the dollar amounts and so forth and the impact, they aren't known until construction is actually complete. So that's when we can actually generate those letters of, you know, what the assessment cost is going to be until the construction project is completed. So we can estimate some of those costs, but it's really hard to actually say, oh, okay, you're going to be paying X, Y, Z until that construction is completed.
I think what the public is looking for is one, maybe in the Horace newsletter, you know, dedicate a page to, if this is the way to do it, is sign up for it, you know, that you would receive project notifications via that. And that puts some responsibility back on us. But I think, you know, coming into a town and trying to become part of what's going on, not everybody is aware of the process. You guys live it because that's your job. But not everybody, you know, there was a farmer there that was protesting how much he was getting levied. And so these are people that maybe don't handle computers every day, right? Or might not know how to do it. So, you know, what are the ways that people can do and how to sign up, and what am I getting when I sign up? You know, it's something that maybe in the Horace newsletter, we could put, you know, everybody gets that newsletter. It'd be worth putting some instructions on there and showing people how to do it, you know, or...
The only thing about the Horace happenings, we don't know if it's timely enough, because some of these things will come around at a certain interval. So we'd want to make sure that, and you know, I'm sure we could probably forecast it a little bit better too, but we want to make sure that everybody has the proper information at the right time so they can come in here. So
does the committee, you guys look at projects for next year, right? I mean, you guys are working ahead of the schedule.
oh yeah, definitely.
Right, so I mean, maybe in January you can publish a list of, you know, projects that are coming or being reviewed for that year. And so people are aware, and if they...
I mean, that we can certainly do, let you know that.
Right.
These projects are in play this year, and then to pay attention to the website.
Right.
Or, you know, we could probably do a little bit better too with the forecasting of when these things would start to get in play.
Right.
Just might be a bigger window, not just,
Yeah.
you know, like say June 1st, we're going to be doing this. It might be a little wider window based upon other things, but
I think there's a step-by-step, you know, for how it starts, the
Yeah, there is.
scheduling and how it all goes down, kind of a time frame. Obviously, some projects go quicker than others, and I think that would be beneficial, is to educate everybody on the process and what
Right.
happens, you know, how it's bid up, when it's bid, you know, the project starting, completion, when bonds are sold. You
I don't know that you want to get too deep in the legalese, because I think the public is looking for an opportunity to have a say in the projects. I think one of the things that came up is, why did you do a roundabout instead of a stoplight? And then, you know, obviously one's more expensive than the other, and then engineering said something about safety and things like that, but, you know.
I hate to say that all that's in the agenda.
Okay.
And every meeting's online. We try to be as transparent as possible. And that was a lengthy conversation.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
something that
Long.
did not happen
Okay.
overnight.
Well, apparently the people are not getting to it. So as the city council members, I think it's part of your duty to make sure that the people you're getting it out there too. You know, there's a two-way street. But as public servants, I think it's part of your job to make sure that you're engaging your public, right?
And we are with the Wall Avenue
So,
project. We did
and-
have a meeting to discuss with residents what they'd like to see there.
Mhm.
You know, we talked about different cost options, and we are having open communication on that. I
Okay.
think part of the problem is people just don't really care until they see the dollar amount, and that's one of the last things that we can put out, because we don't know that.
Okay. But you have like budgets and you have proposals of bids, right?
And all that information is communicated when the project is published for, for the district boundaries and everything that goes along with that. So,
Okay.
yeah, but there again, it's published long before, the project itself is final approved or construction even begins.
Okay.
And that's we're trying to get more proactive about sending letters out. So in some cases, we're sending letters out, we're balancing, what makes sense for that cost of notifying people. And in this case, we sent out that letter, we just did one here, it's not that long ago, notifying
couple
people
weeks.
of a different project. So, right, and that's what triggered a lot of these discussions.
Correct.
So, believe me, without Facebook, without, the streaming, a lot of these communications didn't exist not that long ago. And so keep in mind, we're trying really hard. Can it be improved? Absolutely. But we're trying really hard to be as transparent and go above and beyond in communication.
Okay. So yeah, that was the, from that meeting, they suggested we come up here and make some suggestions to yourselves. There was also no representation as far as members. There were some questions that I think we would have liked to have a council member there and for some of the questions that were being asked. So,
And that's not the time for you guys to be there, because
Right.
you'll have that opportunity with city council at their next hearing. That hearing that I talked about, that's going to be in about 2 or 3 weeks. That's their opportunity to then hear those objections and any appeals. So
Yeah, 'cause that's coming up in
they
October.
They shouldn't be at that
Yep.
assessment hearing.
So, yeah, no, I agree. We'll, like I said, we'll try and keep evaluating this and see what how much more we can do to get it out there. And like I said, we're gonna talk and make sure that we can, what we can put out on our website too and let people know about it, so.
okay.
But no,
Thank you.
I agree. We're trying to get more information out there is better. More transparency, the better. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to grab the mic?
Is this the time to talk about anything on the agenda?
Nope.
Nope.
Or
This is just, if you got something you want to talk about in the public forum, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, wait until we get to our, and even then, some of this isn't going to be for public discussions, so tonight.
Go ahead.
Dave? Okay.
My name is Dave Isaac. I'm a Horace resident. I'm on the south side of Horace, on the other side there, down by pretty much by the country area. First of all, I'd like to say I think, Horace is not a city. It is a town. And you guys have been, the longer you've been in this room, these people, you've been busting your ass. I got to give you compliments for that. Because the transition from a small town to a good-sized town, now we're doing this. I totally appreciate your efforts. I would say my concern is with the last 2 assessments is who is authorizing how these assessments are happening and how accurate they are from assessment to assessment. Okay? This is an example. We're a small town. We have rural plots that are associated with the town. So if you're in the city and you're running a sewer project, they run it by linear feet in front of your house. But when you have a 6-acre lot or a 2-acre lot and you have a long rectangle, you're getting charged a linear run or however they're charging. How do we do it, Jim? What was the assessment?
What you're talking about, Dave, was the sewer line part. That was done by area.
At that time, the Special Assessment Commission decided to do that one by area instead of each or an equivalent unit at that time.
So what happens then is, once again, you know, it's not accurate. A small town has a lot of rural plots. Rural plots are self-sustained. The owners have already paid for their septic system. They maintain their septic system. I'm not saying they're not part of the city, that they shouldn't have to pay like a small fee or something to help the sewer system happen. But to spider web and say, someday someone's going to buy or sell this or do this or you're going to want to hook up, that is a spider web that will never end in an argument, ever. People have paid for it. So I'm concerned about even going back to the last sewer project, how it was assessed across the board. And as you see the habits of whatever happened there, whatever's easiest for whoever decides hurts the taxpayer, which is part of why people were mad Thursday night. Second part is, now this assessment comes. Jim, you want to talk about how that assessment turns out?
For the roundabout at 76th Avenue was equivalent units. So the more acreage you had, there's a formula that's used in West Fargo that we just adopted into Horace for that to balance out the larger lots with the smaller lots.
The 1/10 rule is exactly what Paul said to me when I talked to him on the phone.
Dave, hang on a second. Lucas, you...
This is not the time to object to those assessments. As I talked about at the meeting last week, you'll have that opportunity with the city council.
I'm not objecting to anything because I won't get it no matter what. My point here is trying to put in perspective that this project was approved, and I think the heat that came Thursday night that you didn't witness is a lot to do with what else is coming and is it fair? That's what's happening. Is it fair? And I'm going to use myself as an example. I do the simple, I was a public educated person. I might not be that smart, but that's how it works. But I went and I looked at a piece of paper, said 2 acres, $454. Well, I got 4 acres. The math is what? Okay, $928. Or whatever it is, right? No, I got $1,400. I have 2 cars driving out of my lot every day, just like in town they have 2 acres, 2 cars driving out of their house every day. How is it that my zoning is not allowed to have more subdivisions? You have to have a certain amount of acreage. So you have all these little subdivisions, right? There was no laid down to common sense like, okay, these guys can't, these guys can. You know, it's not like they're 20 acres living on a farmstead like they could develop it. That brought up, I think that brought up a lot of people. I stood next to a guy has 10 acres of alfalfa. It was $4,100 on the spider web of what if. I'm just saying, I can say what if all day. Now, should he pay because he's part of the city? If it is, yeah, he's some fee. You know, I think that's fair. But I think this process of whoever's making these assessments and equations, we might want to tell the public ahead of time, this is kind of how we're going to do it from now on, whatever. Because if we're changing every time there's an assessment, and then we change that process, the citizen doesn't know what to expect.
Yeah, but I don't think we've been changing the process. We've been pretty consistent.
We're working to standardize it with what we're
Yeah,
working on.
it has been changing. Yeah, you know, and I'm just saying it's got to. So, and then everybody, you tell at the meeting, publish it, and do all the communication thing. But then it's like, okay, I get it, right? So my zone is this. I know I'm always going to get 2 times the 2 acre rule, for whatever reason, just because that was the letter that they handed out. And then I get it. So whatever it is you guys voted in, that's how we're going to grow as a town to a small city someday, right? So that was my concern. I just want to make sure that that is somehow there has to be some verify but not micromanage, right? And Jim, I'm not calling you lazy or your team lazy. I'm saying it appears like, well, this works for me today, and I'm just going to flat foot it down, and then
but
whoever gets screwed over.
It doesn't work that way, Dave. There's a lot more thought process into it.
There's no way there's thought process for me paying $1,400 and the people in town are paying $400. That's not fair. That's not even remotely close. I live the second farthest away from anybody to that roundabout. Mm-hmm. I don't care. Will I use it 10 times a year, 100 times a year? Yeah, I'm not protesting taxes. I'm just saying we got to have some sort of equation where it's broken down a little bit. where the taxpayer knows what's gonna happen. That's all. I
Okay.
think there was a lot of heat on, I think that process was probably what could have happened Thursday night. They vented other issues, but I think it's just the heat of like, what in the world, you know? Because we are a small town with acreage lots, and those people with those acreage lots are like, they have their own septic system. They're like, well, I don't get it. Why am I being charged, you know, $4,000 for the septic system that I will never use? In 20 years, I sell the lot and the house, then that person might use it, so I'm paying for the future what if? It's tricky. You know, I don't know if you would operate your household that way, right? So that's why I wanted to bring that up.
Okay, fair enough, Dave. And we'll look at it. I mean, like I said, we're trying to standardize and make this thing correct. Are we going to get it right every time? I don't know. Probably not, but we're going to try.
Yeah, well, like I said,
Okay.
guys, I mean, but since the whole start of even bringing a school out here and the water treatment, all that, there's a lot of money. You got a lot of time. You guys have been putting a lot of time into it.
All right. Got time for anybody else want to talk? Brent?
Talk about 76.
We're not going to talk about the taxes on it. If you want to just talk about it in general.
I want to talk about the construction of it.
Okay.
Is that okay? My name is Brent Hansen. I live over on Sunnyside Street. I piggyback off of what the lady said earlier today. Yeah, I mean, we want to know if you guys can mail out letters. Everybody gets snail mail. Every single person gets it. Not everybody gets internet. Not everybody gets the Fargo form and stuff like that. Snail mail works. You guys have no problem spending, $5 million for the roundabout. Spend a couple $100, couple $1,000, whatever, on snail mail, and it's going to work. Everybody's going to get the letter. No issues with it. What the other gentleman said over there is the process you guys use for the taxes and specials and everything. Nobody understands it. Can you guys mail out to us? Can you give us how you guys figure this stuff out? Can you tell us the secret code of how you guys come to the evaluation and stuff? That's why people are here. It's because they don't understand how it's done. They get a letter in the mail says you got to pay this amount, and like he said, he's got 4 acres instead of 2. Why is he paying $1,400? If you can send out that equation, so we kind of know how the process works, I think more people are going to be more in tune with it, I guess, if you will. Does that make sense, guys? If everybody understands how the process works, okay. And then the other thing about 76th Avenue is I talked to one of you guys here the other night, and the 76th Avenue project, from what I was told, is possibly going to be done by the county, and we won't have to pay hardly any taxes on our special assessments on it because they want to realign 76th Avenue with County Road 6, because that's County Road 6. That goes all the way out. So I don't know if anybody want to talk about that real quick, or...
Well, I would caveat it was for the future kicking out to the east.
Kicking
what
to-
is
that's what I'm
gravel
saying.
right now.
Yep.
Going east,
Correct.
the county has a project in their capital improvements program to extend to the east out to 45th and then go north on 45th to 64th. So that's what they're working on. I believe that project is next year. Is that correct, Jim? And if there are any adjustments to that hasn't been brought to us yet, of if we would want to have it urbanized just a little portion, the very, very west edge,
Okay.
or by Cup Creek. But overall, 76, the county, that's them picking up that project to go to 45th and up 64th. And then Fargo has 45th from 64th to 52nd slated for next year also. So then there'd be another paved in and out to Horace.
And would we get hit with that second one?
My understanding is the county was planning on doing that under their own funds.
That's what we got told.
Okay, I'm
that's
trying
what-
to
that's
get
the
that
latest
information
reading.
out to these guys,
Yeah.
just so they're aware of.
But we can't make that assertion
Nope.
because that's the county, that's not us.
Exactly.
So we can't make any statement on that.
Nope, and I totally understand that. It's just the fact of the what if. What if we get hit from the roundabout all the way to the east where they're going to do the overpass and stuff like that? But it's nice to hear that it's possibly going to be picked up by the county. There is a possibility. So that would alleviate a lot of stress on us for taxes and specials. So it's again, it's a what if, but I just wanted everybody to know that that's what I've heard. And so that's another thing out there. It kind of alleviates a little bit of the pressure.
So
Okay?
the other thing I'll tell you too is that County Road 17 is still a county road until we hit a population of 5,000.
Correct.
Then they hand us the keys.
Correct. Yep. Up to
So
the,
the
up
hope,
to the
the
county.
hope is with working with the county that we can get the improvements to the road and get an overlay on it prior to getting to that level, so we don't have to monkey with the road again for quite a while.
Right.
So that's, again, that's gonna be a ways off,
Sure.
but that's,
Yep.
that horizon you gotta look at too.
Okay.
And that was one of the big hopes with the roundabout, as well as that, you saw the congestion that happened up there with their stoplights, and so choosing to go with a roundabout was hopefully gonna leave County 17 a 2-lane longer.
Right.
And save money that way.
Earlier in that meeting that we had the other night, though, one of the people here said that it was requested by the school district. The roundabout was, and it wasn't, because I actually talked to the 2 school district guys that were here that night. They did not request it. They just requested upgrades, like stoplights or whatever, and the roundabout was one of the things that was on the, we could do this, this, or this. The roundabout was there, so. But saying that the school district wanted it isn't true. I mean, it's not what actually happened. So, and I talked to the school district about that. So, Jim Jonas.
Yeah,
We've never said that.
Yeah. Okay. I've heard that from multiple people.
County
That,
came to us with options.
that's
And
yeah,
they said,
false
here are the
one.
options, what do you prefer? We looked at the potential growth of the school district area
Okay.
as a big impact, plus they put in $1 million towards it.
Right.
So that was a very big win for
Yep.
us.
No, yeah, I'm good with that. So I'm just trying to get the information out there that everybody's talking about this stuff. A lot of people don't like coming to the microphone. So, all right.
Okay.
And then the 76th Avenue going to the east, Brent, is that where they're planning on doing the overpass, or is that going to be on 64?
That's
64.
that's nowhere on a plan.
And that's
anytime soon.
off of our radar.
That's a North
Okay.
Dakota. That's a state level project. So- So we have no control over that. one. So
Actually, the item that Corey moved up on the agenda here, MetroCog is present. They'll talk about the 76th Avenue corridor study.
Right.
In addition, they'll talk about the interchange 76. I think they'll talk about that. I know that project was slowed down a little bit, the corridor study, because the study was also looking at 64.
Okay.
So they're looking at those 2 locations. If that's, I'm looking at Mike and Barrett, but if that's correct, my understanding was we slowed down that study. We would have had the study done a year ago.
Okay.
If we didn't hit pause, working with Fargo and the county and everybody,
Right.
to have an analysis looked at 64th also. So MetroCog is going to talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody else want to hit the microphone or?
Looking to talk about it again?
Well, yeah, just not assessments tonight because we're not going over that.
No, I got one.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Ken Christopher. I live at 10205 72nd Street South, the gravel road that my neighbor just spoke. I'm on the northern end of it. And I guess what I have is just small potatoes compared to everything else. But I've been talking with Brent, and he's really been good. I think I called him 3 times last year about after they blade 72nd Street, can we get some calcium chloride sprayed down? And I've asked him, they do a lot better care of it. Go wash your car and have them blade that road and drive your car on it. It's nothing but a cloud of dust. And if we could just get some calcium chloride sprayed down a couple of times a year, it'd really eliminate a lot of problems. Because, that dust gets into your house no matter what. You can have it sealed up. I can't have my garage doors open when the wind's from the southeast. It's so bad out there. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
I've driven down there a couple of times, but I haven't really
Yeah.
looked behind to see but I'm not driving, paying attention to the dust, but
But I mean,
grew up on gravel roads, so I know.
Well, I grew up on gravel roads too, and calcium chloride's been around for years. And it's not that expensive. And Brent has done a good job, and he's always been cordial, talking to me. And I think his hands are tied. I don't know.
Well, I'll just mention, last year what we did, because we were having problems with the calcium chloride on Wall Avenue, working on that, we actually used asphalt millings. So the council approved us last year to put some asphalt millings down, and that's basically just crushed up asphalt. It's basically like asphalt gravel. And we did that.
That helped a lot.
And to experiment with it, so it went mess up the integrity of the road. They can't blade the road constantly because otherwise the millings get spread out and off to the side. But that's what we did last year. We just haven't done the dust control. This year we didn't do that because we got beat up so bad on dust control last year. And the council was saying hold off on dust control.
Would the millings work better than the chloride?
Calcium chloride worked the best.
Work the best, okay. Yeah, because what he's talking about, you guys don't probably travel on that road as much as what Wall does, and that might be part of this too. But Wall got whacked pretty hard when they put down the calcium chloride last year. It left potholes every time it rained.
Mhm.
Big potholes out.
Well, it's got to be bladed first, and to get the calcium chloride down right away. You can't wait a day or so. You have to have it lined up.
Right, and I don't remember if that happened as part of that project or not, but I just know that the road turned to garbage,
Yeah.
and that's been a concern. But I mean, it's sure something we can look at.
Yeah, I'm not cutting down Brent. He's been good,
Yeah.
on the maintenance, but we got to do something about that dust out there. It's, and then one other little thing I want to say, and I'll get out of here.
Okay.
I've had that hobby ranch out there for 20 years, and right now we have for sale signs up. And when that sells, if it sells, I'm selling my house. I can't afford to stay there anymore. I'm on fixed income, my wife and I. And for what it's worth, I just wanted to mention that. So, thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you. So let's look at that, Brent, and see what we can, if there's, the Glacier can maybe put together a deal on that and see something to look at. All right, I think with that, unless somebody's got anything else they want to add to that, I think we've pretty much got that squared away. Let's move on to number 8. Lucas, Brent, which one of you two want to pick it up?
I can take it if that.
Yep. I'll let you guys.
Okay.
Sounds good. So at your meeting last week, we discussed annexation of property to the west of town. That's all surrounded by city limits. And we discussed resolution of annexation, and we wanted to make sure that that document was prepared for your guys' review. So that was sent to the city last week. Eric, do you have that?
Yeah, Councilman Schmidt had said at the end of the staff report.
Where do you want me to go?
You can keep on scrolling down.
So anyway, what this resolution of annexation does, it describes the property that the city would like to annex. And this resolution that describes the property will get published in the Fargo Forum once each week for 2 consecutive weeks. And property owners that are within that boundary or that are the property that's described have the opportunity to protest that annexation. And they have 30 days from the date of the first publication to do so, to file written protests to that project. And the city also has to send out certified letters at least 7 days before that hearing, letting people know that they have that opportunity to protest to the annexation. So tonight, like I said, I believe you have the resolution in your packet. All you're doing, the only action item tonight is just to adopt that resolution that describes the property to be annexed, and that includes the Westbrook addition, Lazier addition, and Fredette's subdivision.
Okay.
Anything to add, Jared?
I don't know how much you want me to get into the weeds here, but yeah, we're just asking you to request to adopt a resolution for annexation. It's about 67.2 acres. If you're not familiar, you can scroll up to the location map. These are subdivisions on the north and south side of Wall Avenue, west of County Road 17. The main purpose of this annexation is for the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the city to repair this road. The whole Wall Avenue segment actually falls under 2 government jurisdictions. The road quarter segments outside of that area fall under the jurisdiction of the city of Horace, and the road segment within that area falls under Stanley Township. The road is paved except for the Stanley Township portion. It's in a state of disrepair. We've tried to approach Stanley Township to request their assistance in repairing the road, and they said that it wasn't cost effective, and they support the city's desire to annex that area. So what we would like to do is to annex that into the city so that we can make some of those repairs to improve that segment of the corridor, as well as resolve some long-standing drainage issues on the northern half. This is supported by our newly adopted Horace 2045 comp plan, where we've stated that we want to invest into our infrastructure, have a schedule, create some sort of financial plan, and this is part of that. We want to make sure that we keep this road safe for all users. What I've heard is that the city has received complaints about this for years on end, and the city really has no other option but to annex this into the city so that we can get that resolved.
Okay. Yeah, and then also the township has sent a letter of support for this annexation too, because they.
Right, and that's included with the staff report at the end.
Yep. Yep, Todd sent that notice to us, so. All right, you guys have any questions on this? Everybody kind of knows what's going on, so. The road. Jim, anything from you?
Nothing from me.
Okay. Okay, any questions, guys? Otherwise, I'm gonna ask for a motion to accept.
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second.
Dave makes a motion, Brian does a second. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous, so, okay, we'll go from there.
So we will get that published in the paper.
Perfect.
First one probably next Wednesday.
Okay.
This coming Wednesday or next Wednesday?
Not this, but the following.
Following Wednesday.
Our deadline to the form is Friday.
Is there a number for this resolution? Is there a number or
How to put it out.
How to look it up on the forum's website, or
Yeah.
This will be mailed to property owners. So if you're within the area to be annexed, you'll get a letter with the
But not
resolution.
until 7 days.
7 days before, but yeah. So
What about after next Wednesday? Because that's when the protest period starts, correct?
Yep.
So how would you look it up on the website?
Go on the forum's website and just look for a resolution of annexation.
And do those letters come to the city or what do they?
Do what letters?
The letters of protest, are they delivered to the city or to?
Do they go to you guys?
You want to send them to the city
To
auditor?
the city auditor.
Yeah, just send them to city auditor
Yep.
at City Hall.
All right, so let's move on to 9.
I'll touch base and then have Lucas expand.
Okay.
What you have before you is in regards to franchise ordinance and agreement with Excel Energy. What this does is establish franchise fees for Excel Energy. Currently, we don't have a franchise fee with them, but we do have with other utilities. Now, what this does is basically like, best comparison I can think of is almost like rent from a utility for being in right of way. So they have their utilities, like in this case it'd be gas lines within public right of way. They're paying to be able to be in there. And there's agreements within that ordinance is overall agreement of saying how we do business with them. So if we have to have a line moved, it's at whose cost. And then, like I said, it establishes a fee to where they pay the city to be able to operate their utility within their right of way. This is pretty common practice within a lot of communities around, and like I said, we have it with some, but we don't have it with others. We have Excel Energy, what we're bringing forth to you today. We're in conversations with Cass County Electric Co-op. How they pass on, if they pass on that fee or not, that is up to the utility. That is not our decision. Some may decide to just cover that cost as part of their rate, and some may say, okay, we'll put on whatever that percentage fee is, they'll charge that customer too. Like I said, that's however the utility operates. That's not the city's decision how they do that. So what we have before you is an ordinance for that. To complete the first reading, it does require 2 readings. There are 2 points within this proposed ordinance or agreement
that we're going back and forth with them on. However, we want to be able to keep moving forward on this, and then Lucas could elaborate on that if you have any questions on it, or ask if you have any questions about the ordinance itself. I've been working with Lucas and the representative from Excel Energy on getting this ordinance drafted and knocked out. So,
Yeah,
anything
Brett
else?
pretty much summed it all up. So it's a franchise ordinance that cities typically have with electricity companies, cable, and
Yes.
Electric, gas.
Yeah,
Electric and
gas.
And we have the cable ones in place already.
Yeah, and the city has a one for electricity too. I just don't think that they had any.
We just didn't have
franchise fee in there. So
No.
all this is doing is taking care of that. So pretty simple, and it's great for the city because now the city's going to get compensated for them to actually have their utilities installed in the city.
Well,
so
it's
really,
updating the language to remove the previous provider,
Yeah.
right, and use the current name of the current provider for services.
and this should have been done a while ago.
Right.
And
Right.
The city just
I
needs
know.
to do some updating to its franchises.
So are
Yep.
some of the terms of the agreement, do those have to be encoded in the ordinance, or can they be modified with resolution?
They have to be included in the ordinance, by ordinance, yep. With these, how North Dakota has it structured, it's in the ordinance.
Okay.
And then also,
There's also a timing aspect that's different
Yeah.
than just a regular ordinance where, like for this one, they want 90 days
Yeah.
notice of the proposed ordinance change.
Well, part of that is for protecting us, right, because it gives us the vehicle to be able to define the frequency of when they would have those franchise fees would be due, correct?
That is part of it.
yeah, it gives them time to implement it into their process.
Yeah.
The other thing with these is it does kind of hold their hand to the fire a little bit more on when they're doing work within the right of way, and it identifies when they should notify us. They're supposed to do a right of way permit or notify us, and it exempts them from having to pay a fee, but it requires them to notify us so we know what's going on. The plus of that is when a resident calls and says, I have a hole in my front yard, and there was utility work, we know who the heck dug that hole. And we can actually follow up with them and say, hey, get this covered up,
Yeah,
or
get it
when's this
fixed.
going to be going on, or whatnot. So it gives us a little bit more, or it gives the utility provider more accountability to us, so we know what's going on, and then if there's problems, we're able to get that resolved a little easier.
So is this also updating the language for the other franchisees?
Just-
It's not standard, it's specific for itself?
Yep.
Okay.
This is just the gas ordinance.
But so if the city does have work with another entity, there's a provision in here that says that it'll be under the same terms.
Okay.
So the city can't have different agreements, and it also ensures that this entity will work with the North Dakota Public Service Commission to ensure that the rates are in compliance under North Dakota law.
Right.
So that's their regulatory oversight is the Public Service Commission.
So,
Any other
do we need a
questions?
Motion
Need a
to
motion.
approve?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the
Second.
ordinance
Okay.
change.
Brian makes a motion, John's the second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. So Mark, we're bumping 19 up, so, all right. Mark, go ahead, Brother Mark, yeah, sorry.
Brother Bill and other brother.
Yep.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Michael Maddox. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner for the Fargo-Moorhead Metropolitan Council of Governments, the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for the Fargo-Moorhead region. I know that's a mouthful. A couple of years ago, we embarked on a corridor study of 76th Avenue, which was identified in a previous planning effort, the Southwest Metropolitan Transportation Plan, as being an important future corridor for both transportation and adjacent land uses. And as we know, with the school development, we were in talks with West Fargo School District and West Fargo and Cass County and all the jurisdictions around in the placement of that school property and looking at the impacts. So to kind of expand upon the work that was being done, we wanted to look at a corridor length project starting about at the Cheyenne Diversion and going all the way over to the Red River. So it's a 6-mile corridor. And really the purpose of this study was to identify a vision for that corridor given its importance in the future, as was mentioned a little bit earlier in the meeting tonight. So what do we mean kind of by vision? We mean what the functionality of that corridor is going to be in the future, what kind of traffic is going to use it, what kind of other multimodal transportation options are going to be available along that corridor, whether it's biking and walking or transit service or something, other transit service that is yet to be implemented in our area. And so we really wanted to look at, what the development was going to be along the corridor and what that use of the roadway is going to be. So just some key takeaway from the project. Future projects and kind of the full build out of the corridor is a long, long way away. MetroCog's mandate is to plan things about 20 years in the future. This is extremely much longer than that. We considered socioeconomic data, household, which consists of household and job numbers, to be a full build scenario, which means full build out of all of the lands between 52nd Avenue and 100th, and from the Red River to the Cheyenne diversion. And so that, as we know, development is slowly creeping down south of 52nd, kind of over east of the I-29, and then now in Horace is developing as well. But that middle area is really slowly developing because of permanent flood control delay. As permanent flood control gets constructed in this region, we know that those areas will start to be constructed pretty quickly. We'll start developing fairly quickly. And there are some rather large land uses that are planned. We'll get into that in the 64th Avenue discussion here in a little bit. So we just wanted to know, we really wanted to look at that vision and how we can phase in that vision over time. Next slide, please. This just is a map kind of listing some of the conditions that are existing and some of the reasons that we're looking at that study. Again, I guess it's not really future West Fargo. This was developed in 2018. So it's current school district properties, current school on that site, but also on the other side of the corridor, the Fargo School District owns some property, so there may be another school property on the other end of the corridor. And so we really wanted to look at, what the use of that property is and some identified transportation improvement projects along that corridor. Next slide, please. So again, there was a committee that was in charge of running this study, the study review committee. We abbreviate that by calling it the SRC. It was composed of some members of Horace staff, City of Fargo staff, Cass County staff. The school district was on there. Both school districts were on there, and MetroCog as well. And that committee really ran and made decisions and looked at, kind of that vision piece. But also we had a very robust public participation and public engagement strategy throughout the plan, which consists of mailing newsletters to homeowners that live both half-mile north and half-mile south along that corridor, a lot of property owners. We did receive some calls from property owners throughout the project and just kind of had them involved in some of the stakeholder meetings that were happening throughout the project. Next slide, please. So some of those responses to that, there were a lot of options that we ran them through. What do you see the biggest challenges along the 76th Avenue corridor in the future? What are some development types that you can see this corridor wanting? What kind of transportation options would you like to use? So a lot of people said driving, of course, being this far south. A lot of people commute to work and commute to commercial and retail opportunities north of here. But also people wanted to use this for recreation too, biking and walking. There has been identified interchange with I-29 at this location. It's been long studied by MetroCog. And a lot of the people that were engaged in the study were engaged in previous plans that MetroCog was doing. And so a lot of people said the need for an interchange was one of their paramount concerns. Next slide, please. Continue, next slide. So we also did a survey kind of at the end of the project, just to kind of have people choose some of the alternatives that we had put forward, and we'll talk about this a little bit farther in the presentation. This idea of a regional arterial versus a commercial arterial, basically how vehicles are prioritized or whether or not prioritized, to what degree that they're prioritized, and then what kind of intersections do they like, traditional signalized intersections or roundabouts or other things like R-cuts that have been implemented on 52nd. And so those are just kind of some of the areas that we gained citizen input. Next slide. We also went through a building blocks exercise in which we identified future land uses that could develop along the corridor. I'll characterize this exercise in resulting in, we think that this is going to be a major commercial corridor in Fargo, especially if an interchange is justified in this location. Some of the land use that they're planning there is very high density residential, very high density office, and very high density retail, especially around the node at 45th, where 45th comes in and intersects 76. And so some of the future traffic volumes in that area are estimated to be around the 45,000 to 50,000 range in that segment, and of course tapering off as you go east and west. So we're looking at how the roadway can accommodate those future land uses, and how we can build collector street networks both north and south of the roadway to alleviate congestion along the roadway and really look at and have that roadway function as its intended purpose, which is an arterial roadway. Next slide. We also did a visual preference survey looking at kind of how people would like this to be developed, what the look and feel of the corridor could be, and these are just some of the options. Next slide. So now we kind of come to the meat and potatoes of the plan. We looked at two alternatives, like I mentioned before, a regional arterial and a commercial arterial. And these were defined in a plan that MetroCog did a couple of years ago called the West Fargo Parking and Access Requirement Study. That kind of married access restriction and development types per different roadway functional classifications. Currently, there's not really a regional arterial within the Fargo-Moorhead area, which is really kind of, I'll say, a higher level classification that would be intended to move people around the region and through the region rather than directly connecting to land uses. Whereas a commercial arterial I would characterize as more of like a 13th Avenue or maybe a 52nd Avenue to a lesser degree. If you can see here, both alternatives have strong access management. That's a transportation planning focus on trying to really define access points along major functional routes. Next slide. So this is just kind of the difference in right-of-way for what a regional arterial versus a commercial arterial would be. Again, wider, bigger median, pedestrians set farther back on pathways from, whereas in the commercial arterial things are a little bit more condensed. And because maybe a little bit slower speeds and a little different intersections would maybe have to be 6 lanes instead of 4 lanes as well, given that 45 to 50,000 ADT volume. Next slide. So here are just a little bit of the intersection treatments that we looked at. Some of these were for alternative 1 and some of these were for alternative 2. The signalized are the intersections generally looked at in the commercial arterial, and the free flow intersections are generally what was looked at in the alternative 1, the regional arterial, just to try to get people moving and try to get that average time through the corridor down. Next slide. This is an access plan, like I mentioned before, taking into account high degree of access management throughout the corridor, limiting those curb cuts to try to really get people through the corridor, either connecting to University or connecting to 45th or connecting to the interstate to get people to circulate throughout the region to job and commercial opportunities. So you can see this is just kind of the preferred access plan. Next slide. and this would be for alternative 2. Notice the major difference in the signals that pop up. That's one of the major differences between alternative 1 and alternative 2. And in the end, I'll kind of skip to one of the results. Adding signals in the corridor adds about 3 minutes of time to traverse the 6-mile corridor. Next slide. So this is just some alternative comparisons. I won't go through all of these for the sake of time. Next slide. We did a number of development layouts for this, for each of the alternatives. As you can see in alternative 1, everything is kind of more densely packed in there. Buildings would be oriented into the section rather than oriented towards the roadway. This is a concept that many major metropolitan areas utilize in order to allow better access to buildings on local streets rather than on arterial streets. Just because once you get people, you want to get people to the area and then off that roadway and then move at a slower speed within an internal area. This also adds to more of a pedestrian walkability feel, a neighborhood type of commercial feel. Next slide. Whereas the difference in alternative 2 is that things are more oriented towards the roadway, traditionally like you see here in Fargo, with parking lots maybe in front. However, given the degree of access management, some of the traditional aspects of commercial development may not be able to occur. As you can see, having parking lots kind of on the side and building oriented in a different fashion. Next slide. So there were a couple of fly-throughs that we developed. They're very short if you just want to click play. This is one of that 45th area and how dense it could be in the future and how the transportation system would look given this kind of level of density.
This is 45th Street.
This is 76th as you're approaching 45th Street. So this takes into account the land use that was kind of estimated to occur along this corridor. Kind of maybe a little bit bigger buildings, more high density residential uses, maybe medium to big box development, things of that nature. And if you want to go to the next slide, there's another slide. There's another fly through of maybe more of the residential, the low density residential areas. What I would call your attention to on this fly through is this greenway concept that has been pushed forward through this plan of looking at separating a highly functional class road by creating these large boulevards that are lined with trees and probably berms, and then of course pedestrian facilities, which may not be located next to the road, but may actually be in these linear parks. This is kind of things that have been done in other areas, but would be very new to our area, and it may link up also with a planned facility along the diversion. So going into project phasing, next slide. We know that the need for this project is not going to occur overnight. As was mentioned before, the county is paving 76th Avenue to 45th and on 45th from 76th to 64th, which would be the new County Road 6. That will likely be enough to handle a lot of the traffic for a very long time. But as traffic volumes go up, as development encroaches upon this area, there will be need for more roadway improvements. And you can see here, these are just some of the things that are Horace-centric. So this is the 2-mile section kind of in Horace. As you can see here, paving to a 3-lane cross-section on the east side of County Road 17, the west side of County Road 17, would likely service that road for the development life, the full build layout, the full build out of the area. Whereas on the east side of County Road 17, continuing that 4-lane divided roadway that has already been established there going east. And as you go east into Fargo, that roadway could expand given some of the alternatives to 6-lane if necessary. So next slide, please. So just calling out those roadways, cross sections. Just before I stop, I did want to address the need for a 76th Avenue corridor, or I'm sorry, a need for a 76th Avenue interchange with I-29. This was originally kind of one of the prime locations for the next interchange on I-29. However, a couple of years ago, we were informed of a large development that is occurring on the northwest quadrant of 64th Avenue and I-29, which is a new sports complex, a joint effort by Sanford and NDSU, or Sanford and somebody, I can't remember off the top of my head. But given that this large need for improvements there, it was determined that would be the next location for an interchange. However, still needs to be approved by the Federal Highway Administration, as they are the jurisdiction that approves interchanges with the interstate system. And so right now the City of Fargo is working with a consultant to design an overpass, which will be constructed next year, or actually over a 2-year time frame. And then after that, possibly in 2025, is when an interchange might go in at 64th Avenue. Unfortunately for the 76 corridor, this would likely push back the need for an interchange. However, given a full build-out, we know that the 76th will eventually need an interchange. And if you notice tonight, I didn't put time frames on anything. This is really triggered by needs and not necessarily time frames. The joke that I've been saying throughout this project is a lot of this full build-out is likely, somewhere in that 2100 time frame. However, we know that development pressure has been slowly growing, not so much slowly in Horace, but slowly growing in some of the areas central where they need the permanent flood protection to advance. And so after that permanent flood protection is constructed, we will likely see a very high level of development very quickly. To what degree, I don't know. There's still some land north of 52nd that hasn't filled in yet, but we've already seen some a lot of development because of that permanent flood protection has been pushed into Horace, and you guys are grappling with that demand now. We see a lot of industrial development along 100th right now currently as well. One other improvement that is far off in the future, but we want to recognize through this study, is the possibility of a bridge over the Red River on the 76 corridor. This is something that predates me by 30 years. So MetroCog has been planning that facility for 30 or 40 years. Unfortunately, Fargo has really seen much of the growth, whereas Moorhead has not, and we've progressed southward and they have not. And so as development does progress more southward in Moorhead, we will look at such a facility over the Red River. So with that, if you go to MetroCog's website, you can find the draft plan. It's out for comment right now. And if you go to the website, 76avstudy.com, you can find much of the information on the plan as well. And with that, sorry for such a long presentation, I'll open it up for any questions.
Yeah, I know that there was a time when they were talking, 76 might be, 15 years out, but like you said, with the 64th Avenue now going over and putting interchange there, it's probably will be a little bit longer. There will have to be a lot of development to help cover some of that cost, and then obviously the feds get involved and things like that too. So
correct.
Yeah, it'll be a little while.
Yeah, but at least I will say that the project going from here to 45th and up will provide a good connection for a secondary or tertiary route out of Horace.
No, and I think that's what we're looking forward to is when that project is done, because that gives us from the school 2 outs as opposed to just being stuck with the one right now.
Yeah, and we did hear, last construction season last year about the difficulties in Horace, about getting through and out and around.
Oh, yeah.
So,
We all heard that.
Unfortunately, we've been queuing up projects and they're starting to unfold, like the Cass County project. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's what they said. We're looking forward to that happening so we can get that second access point to going north, so we're not just locked into the one.
Thank you for the update.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, Mike, sorry to call you Mark. I was
No,
Mark
that's
there.
okay. Yeah,
Thank you, Mike.
I do believe that there is a recommended action of approving a letter of support for the plan. This plan will be going to our governing body, our policy board, in October, and it really does mean a lot to us that our local communities do support our planning efforts, and we would just like you to recognize that you do support that.
I'll make that motion to approve the resolution of support.
Okay, John makes a motion.
Second.
Chelsea does a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Here you go. Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, Mark, you're up. Sorry about that.
If you don't mind, I'm going to take this off.
Fine.
Yep.
Mayor Peterson, members of the council, my name is Mark Lemaire, currently serving as the construction coordinator for the West Fargo School District. Mrs. Sleddy, the superintendent, is with me this evening as well, so we can answer questions that you have on this item or possibly the item that's coming up after this item on your agenda. To give you a little bit of context, I've worked with the school district's construction projects since 1995, and I can honestly tell you I have never been involved in as much construction activity in a single small area as I have helping the school district with our projects on the middle school and high school. We've been coordinating our work with the work of the city regarding construction of Lakeview Drive and 79th Avenue, 63rd, the county and the city on 76th Avenue and the roundabout, Cass Rural Water User District with the construction of the water tower. So there has been a fair amount of activity going on, and I'll just give you a little bit of an update on our small portion of that. So the Heritage Middle School is a phased project. We have completed phase one. It was completed prior to the start of school. That is the academic portions of the building, the commons, the gymnasiums, the office. We will be approaching completion of the phase two, which is the music rehearsal spaces, likely the middle of October. And then we're scheduled for completion of phase three, which is the auditorium, sometime in December. So some of the challenges that we encountered with construction on that project, soil and weather conditions. It's a very wet site. The soils were sometimes difficult to work with, and that had an impact on our schedule. So we made the start of school, but by the skin of our teeth. So that was something of a challenge. We also had some challenges that related to code review. So early on in this project, the city of Horace had contracted with More Engineering to do the code review, and those folks got hired on then by the city of West Fargo through a transition. And when COVID hit, the city of West Fargo said, we're sort of done working with other jurisdictions. And so we were without a code review process. We were sort of in limbo. And I have to say, we were very impressed with the speed with which the staff and the city of Horace actually engaged a code official for that project. We did not miss one single inspection, and these were going on weekly. So that was great. But it did cause a few hiccups as we got to completion. So the code review that had been done by I'll just say the city of West Fargo, was not as comprehensive as your code officials preferred. So there were some things we were doing right at the last minute with regard to exiting and some occupancy things that we're planning now when we look to the future for Horace High School. We're going to get ahead of those. So it's actually going to work to our benefit now that we have the same folks involved from the start as we will at the finish. We also had some issues that came about with the availability of water. We actually had to deliver water to this site a couple of times a week throughout the entirety of it until the Water Users District was able to get water into their system. And they unfortunately experienced some delays with their construction, which then impacted our project and pushed some of that back. But in the end, we got it done. We also were a little bit responsible with our contractors for some delays that impacted the city, and that had to do with the retention pond. So early on, just trying to get some of that coordination done between our contractors and your contractors. And there were a few times when Jim was on the phone with me or Brenton was on the phone with me or vice versa. And our contractors weren't always road friendly, so sometimes they were dragging their dirt and debris out onto the roads, and so I'd be getting phone calls too. But through that whole process, with as many contractors as we had and as much work as went on, somewhat amazed that these guys are still talking to me, so I think we managed to get that thing done. The Horace High School project. So that project just had started this spring. It was scheduled originally for completion in July. I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges we're experiencing there. That would be the majority of the academic spaces, the commons, the gyms, and then the music rehearsal spaces and auditorium, and one of the academic areas scheduled for completion in November. So it was not intended to have that school all ready on day one either, so it'll be phased like we have with the middle school. So here, some of the challenges we had. A building permit was one. We were right in that middle of that transition, coming away from the city of West Fargo, and the city was looking to hire, and so there was a time frame in there where we didn't actually have that code official and that review going on, and so that caused us a little bit of heartache and angst initially, but again, with the recommendation of staff and the support of the city commission, you engaged with Midwest Inspections, and so now we have actually your code official that's on staff who's been doing site inspections for us, and then the outside reviewer, and we were able to get eventually through that process of code review and got a partial permit, so that allowed work to continue while they continue to do the plan review, and then we finally received the full permit. That did have an impact on our time frame, but we also had some other impacts. It was an issue that came up during code review, and it had to do with the size of the areas that were protected by our firewalls. And so in the original design, some of those areas were too large based on the currently adopted code. So we had to go back and rework some of those plans. That impacted the phasing of our construction. It impacted the schedule of delivery of materials, and so that's had an impact on our schedule. And then we're also, with this, it's the same site. So we're still dealing with water issues and soil issues here as well. And one of the things which is going to be, I think, very important for us is going to be the completion of the underground improvements on 82nd Avenue. Our plan is to rely on those underground improvements to dewater this site. Right now, we have basically 4 pump pits that are daisy-chained together. So they're moving water from one location on site to another location, eventually getting it to the point where it can go into the detention pond and move off-site. But it's working now, and we're a little bit drier kind of in these last few days of the fall. But come spring, that site is going to be an absolute disaster for us if we don't have the ability to move water off. And so our original request had been to get those improvements included in 82nd Avenue. So we're hoping that can continue to move forward. We also had some coordination kinds of issues that impacted the schedule a little bit. Again, some of it was on us. You were trying to construct new roadways out there, and we had contractors all over the place, and so they were driving on roads before they should have been, and that was driving your contractors crazy. We also had because we were anticipating Lakeview to be done a little bit earlier than it was, anticipated that being the main access point into the high school. We did have to continue using our temporary road, which was constructed actually for the middle school so that the high school could continue. But that required us to basically build a spur then over the top of the new roads. And so we got to a point where we had to move that a couple of times, and then one afternoon they just decided to pull it out, and we had people on the site that no longer had a way out, so that caused a little bit of angst and friction. But again, we're working through it, and we're all still talking, most days anyway, I think. The athletic amenities project, so this is to get all of the supporting improvements installed for the middle and high school. That includes a baseball field, softball field, and then the football stadium. That's a multi-year project. It's been under construction this summer. It will continue through the fall and over the winter, with a completion date next fall. So in this first phase, we're looking at the construction of the concession buildings that will serve all these amenities, the stadium seating that's going in at baseball, softball, and football, the lighting for the baseball and softball, and the initial grading for baseball and softball. And then in year 2, we'll finish up kind of all of that, and then we'll be installing the artificial turf at the football field, installing the running track, and then tennis courts. One of our big challenges on this project, so with the 76th Avenue construction, the county presumed that the school district was going to need some of the clay and other excess materials from their project, and as it turned out, our sites were balanced, so we didn't need it. But then the city thought, hey, that'd be great, we could use it, so we just said, store it on our site, no problem. Well, it got to be a problem when we got into this spring, and your contractor was having timing issues moving it, and so that started to impact our schedule, although I have to say I think we've been able to mitigate that now and are likely kind of approaching being back on schedule with the athletic amenities project, so that's good. The final project that will be coming to a city near you is the Horace Elementary School addition. That project is going to require some attention up front, so we're going to be coming back before this body to request changing to zoning. Right now it's RE, I think, Barrett, is that right? Yeah. And we'll want that to be zoned public facilities. And then we'll also need to update our plat. Interesting things you find out when you look back in history, but the parking lot and the bus loop have been in the city's right-of-way since that was originally constructed. So we're going to be looking at making some changes there and getting some of that cleaned up. So that's going to be happening yet this fall. The plan is to design and bid the project then over the winter and have construction start next spring. That project will take that entire year and into the following fall, so completion in the fall of 2022. The idea is we'll do an expansion of that building to the north side, try to mitigate the impacts that it has on the existing facility. So the original plan was to double the size of that school. We have 12 classrooms there now. We were planning to build it to 24 classrooms, which is the size of a typical full-build elementary school in the West Fargo School District. However, we found out through meetings with the county and the city that there were some requests to substantially change how we were impacting traffic flow on County 17. So they wanted to be pulling all of that traffic so it's not queuing up on County 17. That required us to relook at our entire site. And so we're going to be spending a fair amount more on civil work, on pavement and those sorts of things than was in the original plan. So just actually before I came down here, our Planning and Development Committee looked at this, and we're still going to go ahead with the expansion, but it's going to be 8 classrooms. So the building will go from 12 to 20 classrooms instead of 12 to 24. And then in a future bond referendum or future project, likely put those remaining 4 classrooms on. And at this point, it is for the future. Those 12 classrooms that we have been in use for a fair number of years, and this fall they still served the needs of the immediate Horace Elementary attendance area, but that is going to start changing, and it's going to start changing relatively quickly. So in the category of challenges on this project, stormwater mitigation is going to be one. Right now, when we double the size of that building, We're going to be covering up what is currently now green space with hard surfaces. When we start paving much more of that site, we're going to have a lot more hard surface. So we're going to need to figure out ways to be neighborhood friendly with our stormwater. So we're looking at installing a detention pond. And then what we would like to do is work with partnering with the city of Horace on maybe beefing up the nearest lift station so that it can serve those neighborhoods, but then also potentially assist us when our detention pond is full and move some water out.
That's a very good thing. I like to hear that.
And then the last kind of challenge is going to be trying to just phase that construction, because we're going to be on virtually every side of that building, and we're going to need to continue operating it as an elementary school through that construction period. So we'll be working on making sure that our contractors are aware of kind of what is expected of them, and make sure that school can continue as usual and they can continue their work as well. A couple of remaining items that aren't related directly to this construction, but we will be at some point in the future coming back to this body too to review the developers agreement and the park agreement related to the Horace High School and Heritage Middle School site. Everything is generally okay there, other than at the very southern end of the property. We had set aside in the original development plan property for the park district, and since that point they have indicated that they would prefer cash in lieu, so we're going to need to just update that portion of the agreement to reflect that. And there is some discussion as well about linking Lakeview to 82nd Avenue, and that would cross over that portion of the property that had been originally included in dedication to the parks as well. So we're trying to work through that. Lucas has drafted some of the preliminary paperwork, but we are still kind of awaiting kind of the final definitive answer on that connection through. So that will be coming, I don't know, I told Jim I was going to put a pin in it until next March, but I'm not sure if I can wait quite that long. We'll see. So that's going to be out there. And then obviously, say it one more time, 82nd Avenue, that if those improvements are not installed this fall, we're already looking at schedule conflicts and problems at that high school, but it is virtually impossible for us to see that construction will be able to be completed if we don't have those underground improvements in place on 82nd Avenue. It is just going to make the final completion of that project by the start of school impossible. We're getting closer to that sort of impossible every day that goes by now, just with everything else that's going on. And unfortunately, COVID-19, while it hasn't had a direct impact on the work that's going on our site on a daily basis, it has definitely impacted our supply chain and is impacting when materials are available and the lead times. So anything that we can do to help you make a decision on 82nd Avenue, we're here to answer those questions. And I'll answer any questions you have on our projects.
I guess I had a question is, were the schools always going to be a phased approach like that?
Yes, the middle school had been designed from the very beginning as a three-phase. We knew when we built Liberty Middle School, where we didn't have a phased approach, that we didn't get the music wing done anyway, and we didn't get the auditorium done anyway. And so we were beating on the contractors in a way that really wasn't productive. It was just too much to get done in the time frame that was available. So when we looked at this design, we said, okay, if we can live at Liberty Middle School when it opened without music classrooms and without the auditorium, why don't we just give the contractors a safety valve, a way for them to look at how they can phase this project as well for their benefit. And it was very apparent it would not have happened on this project had we not phased it. And it would have had the potential of impacting the academic parts of the building because they would have split their workload differently. And likely we would have had more of the building, the auditorium and music maybe are farther along, but then other parts of the building are farther behind. So we did not want to risk it. So, and the same with the high school. We did add, though, later, so the original plan was for the auditorium and the music wings to be delayed, but we also, right in one of the addendums that came out right before bid date, we also included one of the academic areas as a kind of a safety valve area as well, because the school is going to be very, very small that first fall when it opens. So we thought, why not give the contractors as much of a chance to get the portions that we absolutely need complete by the time that we need them.
So without COVID, have the contractors, understanding that the contractor that got the whole bid sometimes has challenges delivering on projects, have they met your schedule, or has that still been a challenge as well?
The middle school, we've experienced some challenges, but again, it's hard to separate what's COVID related and what's not. I'll give you an example. One of the big challenges that we had at the middle school was with vinyl wall covering. Well, the vinyl wall covering supplier is ordering their products like they normally would, but really they should have been ordering them, much, much farther in advance. Because as soon as a factory shuts down, even if it's not shut down when your items are in production, your items get pushed in the queue so that the things that got canceled when they were shut down go out the door first. So we struggled with that. But in the end, overall, I'd have to say, even though it was frustrating and we went right down to the wire, considering all of the hurdles that we had on that project, from the kind of beginning with the weather and the soils conditions and the impacts of COVID, the fact that they delivered a project in time for school was still actually kind of, from my perspective anyway, a substantial win.
So with construction still going on in the other two phases, are there any safety concerns for the kids being on campus there? With construction still happening, vehicles and all that, are there things that we can help with, or not saying we could, but things we need to be aware of as a city for safety reasons?
So Mr. Ashheim from the city and Mr. Blevins from Midwest were both involved in the discussions about the phasing, the construction that was going on after we got our initial certificate of occupancy. So we have a cordoned off area where the contractors are parking, and we have a separate construction entrance where the contractors are entering, and then we have that portion of the building where construction is going on is currently blocked off from the student population. So we're doing what we think we can do. From a reasonable standpoint, to keep construction going. Obviously, we could say, no, you can only start working at 3:30 in the afternoon and you have to work until 11 at night, but that gets to be somewhat unrealistic too. So we're trying to create that separation, be friendly to the contractors, but still be providing that level of protection to the students and staff that are there. So there are, I think, reasonable efforts that were made, to ensure that construction can go on while we have occupancy. And as we get to this October date, when the music classrooms are going to become available, we're going to be bringing Mike and Keith back on site. They're going to do another review because the auditorium construction is going to continue. We're going to need to make sure that we pass, kind of get their blessing for that continued construction as well. So, they're not pushovers, right? They're kind of holding the line. In fact, they were pretty firm in terms of their expectations on a number of these items, and essentially, pushed us to get them done, and we did. So I don't envision that that they're going to accept anything that they think is risky or not up to kind of their standard.
All right. You got any other questions? Or?
Thank you for the update.
Yeah, appreciate that, Mark. Yeah, it's kind of nice to hear the inside stories on some of this stuff, because we know there's challenges with this thing, especially a project that size. There's always going to be challenges. So just glad you guys were able to pop the doors open so we could have the middle school open. So
let us know on the high school too if there are things that we need to know. Obviously, we heard about improvements on 82nd, and if there are other issues that come up,
I think that's probably the key for you as a council. I think there are a lot of other challenges that we're going to be dealing with our contractors to try to get that project complete, to deliver it to the residents of this community and the residents that will be attending. But yes, and Brenton knows, Jim knows, I've got them on speed dial. And so when there are issues, we're trying to reach out and try to nip them in the bud if we can.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. All right, we'll roll right in the next one then. 11.
Okay, this one's regards to 81st or 82nd Avenue. Mark touched base on it from the school's needs in regards to this. Now, where we're at, just so you have a very quick update of where we're at with the project. The project has been on hold because the notice to proceed hasn't been signed. That's been mainly due for quite a while from just trying to get a temporary easement from property owner adjacent to the south. We believe we've made quite a bit of progress over the past week with that individual, and what we found, Jim and I, we met with some of the representatives for the developer this afternoon and found out there was a discrepancy between how much right-of-way or temporary easement was needed. So I think that was a very good conversation because we were able to find out that contractors asking for more than what the city was. We're trying to work that out and think that we could probably get something resolved in the very near future. However, also arose within the past week and a half has been some concerns in regards to introducing another project into the mix for special assessments without having it hashed out who's going to pay for what, or having some general understandings with the main parties involved with this project. Jim and I met with the school district this afternoon, had a very good, productive conversation, and really got into the overall conversation of how can we have comfort and know the council would be comfortable with us moving forward. Because our concern at the staff level is if we sign a notice to proceed and introduce another project where there might be concerns of special assessments, that the council may not be real thrilled that we did that. So we want to make sure the council would be all right with that. If you would want to have some sort of agreement in place, and I know Superintendent Sleddy and Mark, we've been talking, like I said earlier today, about what that agreement could entail. Obviously, there's going to have to be some details hashed out. But one idea would be is if we had some sort of agreement that would be hashed out, we'd have a council member whose portfolio it fits under the most or most applicable. And I saw it as two different council members. It could be Councilmember Schmidt or Fenelon, because Schmidt's infrastructure, Fenelon is more on that finance operations side. So either one of them could do that. We could work with if that's the route you wanted to go. But like I said, we had some hesitancy from the angle of the notice to proceed to sign that and go from there. So we wanted to have some discussion with council. Also, if you wanted to have a discussion with the school district, that's why Mark hanged out for this item. Beth is also here to be able to give you the school district perspective. And if you want to have conversations just in general about how some of this stuff has gone, you're welcome to do so.
Wow. Again, I think it's the thing that is the concern right now. Brent and I have talked about this, and I think all of us, because of what went on here over the last 10 days, we want to make sure we're a little bit more clarified on what's going to happen with the specials there. Right now, we haven't got all that clarification, and we don't want to have any more issues that we've encountered here over the last 10 days. So we kind of want to make sure that we've got a little bit more formality, detail. That's what Brent and I were talking about. I'm assuming you guys had some of this conversation this afternoon as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at, is getting some more clarification on how we can proceed here, so we don't run any more of these issues that we ran into previous. So that's why I'm trying to figure out how do we want to take the next step here. Then we want to have another meeting conversation about this. Bring it up at the next meeting. What we talked about. I mean, I'm just kind of looking for feedback from you guys.
What I heard is the city staff and either Councilman Schmidt or Councilman Fenelon getting together with the school district and any other parties intended and coming to agreement. It sounds like we're getting there. Just probably need another meeting. But yet, if we give the notice to proceed, it doesn't have to come back in our next meeting, the first Monday of October, correct?
What our goal, I think,
as from our conversation earlier today was with the school district, was probably try to get an agreement in place or drafted up to be where we could bring something to you, even if it's just some sort of like memorandum understanding or something. And I'm not the expert on that. I haven't even had a chance to talk with Lucas about the details of something like that. But what we do is say, okay, council, are you comfortable with what's being proposed? And then at that time, you give the authorization to sign the notice to proceed. So it would be at the next meeting is what our goal would be.
So-
Our goal would be that, because the main focus in talking with Jim and the school district, their main concerns are tied to the underground. We're walking a fine line anyways. If I sign the notice to proceed tonight, we're walking a fine line of being able to actually get the road in right now anyways. It's all depending on the weather. We're getting pipe put down, like storm sewer. It's a little easier to do. You have a bigger window than pavement. So they could be putting, in a typical year, you could still be putting pipe in the ground November, December. But come December, after December, you're not going to be putting pipe in the ground after that.
Yep.
But that's what we're trying to still target, is if we could still get the underground taken care of, we think that we could be able to tackle that come the first meeting, after the first meeting in October.
It's not uncommon for us to have projects that span years anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a matter of having the agreement in place so that construction can proceed.
The one plus we do have is the contractor is chomping at the bit to get out there.
Right.
It's almost a daily phone call for the school district, the city, of can we start yet? Can we start yet? So I know they're hungry to just get it out there, and the contractor does have a very good track record of when they say they're going to come in and hit the floor running, they've done it, and they've proven that this year. It's Dakota Underground, they've been doing Lost River 5th Edition and Southdale Farms. And if you haven't seen how fast they're able to get that work done and do it well, just go out and take a look at Lost River or Southdale and see what's going on.
Well, we talked about them last meeting.
Yeah.
How exceptionally well they've been working
Yep,
with the city.
exactly.
Well, you almost debate it's a equipment lot out there that they're trying to sell equipment versus using it, so there's so much.
At one point at Lost River, I think they had almost 25 pieces of equipment. That's excavators, dump trucks, skid steers, loaders, everything. So, like I said, they've shown that they're willing to put the resources in to get something done, and I think they'd probably do the same with this project. I think it's just we need to have a week or two here, or a week or so here of hash out how this project would work. The assessment district, I would say the vast majority of the properties impacted in this are owned, by the school district and a few developers. Right. So we'd be able to have some good conversation with them, or be able to try to do that.
So I'll work with Brendan to get this started and try. The goal would be to try and get a draft assembled so we can bring it back to the next meeting.
That's what I would say, is try and get that done. Would that be all right then, that we guys have those meetings and we can get this a little bit more finalized?
I think the side of it is we are a council are willing to move forward, but when something that just occurred comes out of the middle of nowhere and is said that things have broken down in communications and this, I mean, just as Mark said, there's speed dial on their phones, they know each other, that's concerning to us. And for us to be making sure that our residents who are concerned about the specials and that kind of stuff, we want to be efficient and we want to work through this, but we cannot have something come out of the middle of nowhere, or that's going to change the relationship to be more back on our heels. And it's, in my opinion, we're going to go all the way through the school board to get everything approved, and I know you guys don't want that either. So that's my concern, and I'm more than happy if you want to do it, or I'd be more than happy to do it too, and we can work through it. But we just need a commitment, and words are words, and we'll work through that.
Yep. Okay.
Well, living in the construction world, I'm probably going to get in big trouble for this, but I'll say it anyway. I know all about getting to work and getting things done. If we were to give a notice to proceed sooner than later, how much work would really happen in the next 2 weeks that would prevent us from, doesn't it bring everybody quicker to the table to agree on this if we were to start working? And if we don't, shut her down.
I would say that as of right now, From talking with Jim quite a bit, they would hit the floor running pretty quick. If we signed it, they would be out there before probably middle, late part of the week. The one advantage right now the city does have is if you have a notice proceed, if you don't, until you sign that notice proceed, they can't ding you on costs of anything. You can pull the plug on the project. If you sign the notice proceed, then we're on the hook for any costs tied to that project. So that's the difference there. Is if you shut it down, then you're giving them days for delays and opening yourself up to your favorite phrase, change orders. So.
Yeah, Jim's ready to
Well, I say, if we're willing to get together and talk and that kind of stuff.
I'd say make it happen sooner than, I think
Yeah.
this could be expedited a little quicker.
We just need the commitments from
Well, but on the other hand, we need to bring that agreement back to here, to you guys to review and approve.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can approve that to proceed pending agreement made with the councilman and the parties involved? So it doesn't have to go back. I mean, come on, we're so close on this thing. It's gonna happen. It has to. Everybody knows
you're
it does.
you're talking dollars and cents now, and that's where everybody starts getting back on their heels. So there needs to be an agreement on these dollars and cents, or at least a general provision of how we're gonna split this up.
I think your bet, and I'm just giving you my opinion on this, would be your best to, by the time you'll go through discussions and go through, if it was to be ran through school board or anybody, because we'd probably be looking at making sure that the school board is receptive to this. 2 weeks is not outlined. I mean, the other thing is if you guys wanted to have a special meeting, if we had already said, hey, council, we have it ready to go. Mayor, do you want to have that? I mean, that's also
I would think
always
that's
an
feasible
option.
if
Maybe we should ask the school board, does it have to go back to a school board meeting, or how would that on your end work for time frame?
So in discussions today that I was actually able to participate in, I think that where we left it was that we were going to try to put together, from the city's standpoint, an overall, preliminary distribution methodology for the assessments. And that would be then agreed to by in this case, it would be the school district. And knowing that it is preliminary, trying to come up with some language with, minimum, maximum kinds of things, because again, until your city engineer actually kind of gets the final bill and pays it off, and you've actually gone through your assessment process with all of the other landowners, kind of all bets are off. But I believe that in the end, it is the intention of the superintendent and the current business manager to carry that message forward and to get that confirmation from the school board. That's really, I think, what they were looking for sort of all along, was just an opportunity to bring our board along, and we just kind of ran out of time.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna look for a motion from you guys on what you want to do.
I motion Brian to move forward with creating some type of, what do you want to call it, an agreement.
A memo
School
of
district,
understanding, I think that's what it is.
And school district, and do we need to do any other landowners? Or just the school district is our big governing?
The big one is school district, but
Okay.
we did discuss engaging some of the landowners nearby.
On the parameters of the
yeah.
distribution of funding for this additional work. And with the goal of bringing this back in 2 weeks.
Correct.
So we can keep it moving, and or even sooner with a special meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Dave made a motion. Get a second?
Second,
Okay, Chelsea does a second.
as long as we see them on the news next time, it's all good things. All good things.
Agreed. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. So let's get this done, guys. Hope to have this done by next time we get together. All right. Thank you, Mark and Beth, for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
All right, on to the next one. Barrett, you got this.
Okay. What you have before you is an application for a conditional use permit submitted by New Horizon Homes for a property located at 77 95 Jacks Way. If you pull up the location map, it's in the southeast quadrant of County Route 17, 76th Avenue. This is Lakeview Heights, 3rd edition. The reason for this conditional use permit was to be proactive and allow for restaurant use in the C1 neighborhood commercial zoning district. The C1 neighborhood commercial zoning district only allows this use via a conditional use permit. The other option to rezone wasn't available because this parcel is under an acre, doesn't meet the minimum lot sizes of the other commercial zoning districts. So the applicant would like to request this conditional use permit so that restaurant use is allowed and that somebody can pull a building permit for that land use on this parcel. Staff sent out notice to property owners. Staff hasn't received any comments, and staff recommends approval as stated in the staff report.
So this under an acre, this is going to be enough size for what they're going to be looking at doing then, right?
Yeah, if my understanding is you can build a restaurant or use a property for a restaurant on half an acre to 3/4 of an acre, and I have Mr. Mack here.
Sure. Just curious on parking, just making sure that there's enough turf to do this.
I'm Chris Mack, representative for New Horizon Homes. We had a user for this property. That has kind of switched, but we still, the whole time when we did Lakeview Heights 3rd edition, we had a fast food type restaurant or coffee shop or something planned to use that lot, I guess. The way it works with ordinance in this size lot, I've done several different layouts, and